What's the deal with gum disease? Gum disease is an infection of your gum tissue between your tooth and your underlying bone structure. How'd you get there? Well, first it started with something called gingivitis. Gingivitis is the inflammation of your gum tissue. Why is it inflamed? It's inflamed because bacteria is building up between your tooth and your gum tissue, oftentimes in calcified plaque known as tartar. Tartar is basically a bacteria hotel. Once it builds up on your tooth, bacteria live inside that stuff, and then it irritates the gum tissue that's right next to it. The gum tissue gets mad. It's like, oh, hey, I don't like this. It gets inflamed, and then it starts bleeding. So that's gingivitis going on. So when gingivitis goes on for a while, it actually creates what's called a periodontal pocket. Now, a pocket develops, meaning the tissue, your gingival tissue starts degrading downward. Your underlying bone structure starts degrading downward, creating an actual physical pocket where more plaque and more bacteria start getting inside. Once that kind of snowball begins, then other organisms get inside there, primarily something called a parasite. Now, parasites do live in your mouth, but they're not out of control. They're kept under control by the good bacteria in your mouth. Once things start destabilizing and creates an actual physical area for parasites to want to infiltrate, it creates the gum infection known as gum disease. Now, one of these parasites is known as something called a spirochete. Spirochetes you'll see oftentimes in the beginning stages of gum disease. And the spirochete is called spirochete because of the word spiral. It's these spiral structures kind of zipping around inside this slide. Here you can see them moving around in there. They're actually spiraling through. That's an actual organism. It's a parasite that's not supposed to be running around inside your gum tissue. There's other parasites in there. This little fat little guy, this worm-looking fellow over there, that's a glass rod. So glass rod and spirochetes are the most common parasites you'll find in the beginning stages of gum disease. Now, the thing is, you got parasites in your mouth, you sure as heck don't want them in there, so you want to treat this issue. There's two ways of treating this issue. The first one is called periodontal flap surgery. Periodontal flap surgery is done primarily by a periodontist. And it is, in fact, as painful as it looks. It involves cutting away your gums from your teeth down to your underlying bone structure, your jawbone, using instrument to scrape along your tooth structure to remove the diseased, infected tissue. And once they do that, they sew it all back up. The problem with this is it's very painful to do it. Your post-operative healing is going to be very prolonged and very uncomfortable, all right? And the problem is it's not a very specific or accurate method. It's just the method they've been using for a really long time. It's not ideal. The second method, which I recommend, is now the current state of the art, is known as laser therapy. Now, laser therapy is a lot easier on your body. It's much more specific and much more accurate. All right. So basically, what you do is you take a laser and you put it between your gum tissue and your tooth structure. And this involves minimal amount of anesthetic. Usually, we use a topical anesthetic, and it just numbs your gums up, and that's all you need. All right. If the laser goes down inside there, it basically vaporizes the diseased tissue and the offending bacteria and parasites. It does that in that pocket, kills them all. All right. But it also goes farther than that. It actually kills any of the bacteria and parasites that lodge itself physically inside your root structure, where the traditional method cannot get to that area. It can't physically go into a tooth. Well, laser energy easily can zip right in there and kill all those guys. So it's more effective because it's killing bacteria and parasites in every direction, in the pocket, in the tooth, and then once we do that, we remove all the calcified plaque off the tooth structure using sound waves with something called a cavitron, which you normally get a regular cleaning. It basically seems like that super fancy water pick. That's what it's doing. It's literally obliterating all the calcified plaque along the tooth surface. So the areas where the bacteria and the parasites like to live, it's removing all that. So once that area is nice and clean of all the calcified plaque and tartar and all the diseased tissue is removed, this is what we considered a treated area. Now, the reason why lasers are so great is because they're specific. The specificity is very high. The accuracy is very high. All right. Now, another example of how lasers are specific are, for example, if you have a laser that removes only rust. And in this case over here, you can see this laser is going over this guy's hand and a rusted metal plate, but the hand was completely untouched. The reason is this laser is specific for rust. So it'll only go after rust, not the person's hand. So just like the specificity of this laser, the specificity of the lasers we use in the office is specific for diseased periodontal tissue and also the bacteria and the parasites within that area. So it doesn't harm the healthy tissue in that area, so that the accuracy and the specificity of laser periodontal treatment is going to be the highest level treatment you can get. And once you get the treatment, and now we're at a disease-free state, we have to maintain that with something called periodontal maintenance. That basically means you're getting regular cleanings every 3 months to make sure that the plaque doesn't build up to create the repocketing of the area, and that the bacterial load and parasite load never occurs again. So that way you're equivocally healed of gum disease. And that's the deal with gum disease.